Greetings, everyone. This is Dr. Ray Lindley, Executive Director of Array Global Accreditation. It's great to have you with us again. And we are pleased with what we're doing today, because what we try to do is the last workshop of every year. We try to open it for discussions and questions which you have. And we've received several requests for items to discuss, and we'll narrow those down into three. We'll first of all talk about how we help the below average student, and Dr. Mike Poe, who is our Associate Director, will be leading that discussion. And then we'll be talking about ways that we can improve our teaching, and I'll be leading that discussion. And then Dr. Jake Frankham, who's the Associate Executive Director, will lead the third area, and that's around the whole area of technology. We're pleased to have with us today also Dr. Drew Hines, who has done workshops for us before, and he's a real expert in technology, and I know that he'll be able to talk with some specific things, especially some questions about artificial intelligence, which we talked about. So, as I said, this is the last workshop of the year, and we're pleased to do this. We will not be doing workshops in the months of June and July, but we will be back in August for our third workshop. Dr. Jake, is there anything else we need to announce before we go today?
I think there's a few different things that we'd like to make sure that people are aware of. We just ended our Stella Science Fair, and the winners will be posted in the next few days. So stay tuned to our social media pages. And again, go through the services that we have and the items that we do provide, and learn about them and see how they can best support you and your school and your students. Another activity that we're promoting, that we're recognizing students, is the work that they did in their service project. It's called Me and My Community. Those students that did 20 hours of community service over the last year, we're recognizing them this next week. And there's a ton of really, really cool service projects that were completed. So we're excited about that. I just encourage everyone during the summertime, as they reconnect and get refreshed for the upcoming year, that you go through and look at our services that we provide. There's tons of different services and support mechanisms that we have to help you as you start another wonderful school year. So Dr. Ray, I think that's it.
Great. So Dr. Mike, you got the first call here, and you're going to be talking about how we're helping the below average student. And so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And folks, so you'll know why that I'm not getting live on camera. I am actually helping announce a state track meet here in Idaho. And it's just not a very good background at all for me at this particular point in time. So it's going to be vocal only, but that's okay. I've got some slides. Dr. Jake, I'm going to need to have you go ahead and share those slides for me so that we can see those. The other things, okay.
Yeah, hold on. Go ahead.
That's fine. As I get started, in terms of dealing with students that have difficulties and those kinds of things, I'm going to approach it from a slightly different standpoint than most. And I'm going to take a look at how do we be professional as we're preparing not only on how to work with those students, also their parents, also the administrators that we work with, or for administrators, the teachers that we work with. And okay, I need to hang on just a second.
Can you see the screen, Dr. Mike?
I can, but it's also covering up my notes on my end. So I'm going to I got to figure out how to do this. Well, I can actually work through it, but it'll be okay. I think part of what I need to do is to okay. Well, that's all right. I can work through this. Again, part of it is thinking like a professional. One of the things to realize is that as as you are doing your job, whether it's as a teacher and an administrator, whatever, is that teaching position, that educational position is one of the most important professions in the world. And our profession really does allow all of the other professions. So when we're thinking about that, we can't be trying to say that we're the best by any particular stretch of the imagination, but we do want to make sure that we do act professional, that we think like a professional. We're doing our training. We're constantly looking at how to improve to do those kinds of things. As we're dealing with, excuse me, as we're dealing with our words, we need to be talking like a professional. We need to be confident in what we say. But again, we need not to put people down. We need not to talk down to people as we are working through our conversations, as we're dealing with people. One of the things that's especially important as we are talking like a professional is that we understand the people that we are talking to. As educators, we have all kinds of acronyms. We have IEPs, we have, that's just one example. But when we're talking with them, yeah, PLCs, I mean, it just kind of goes on and on. But it's important that we understand that not everybody that we're talking to, parents, community members, those kinds of folks, always understand what those things mean. And so we need to identify if it's an IEP, an individual educational plan. And we need not only to tell people what it is, but we need to explain to them what an individual educational plan is, or a PLC, or those kinds of things. And I could go into lots of personal examples where I didn't do that very well, and people called me on it, and that was fine, because I should have been called on it. But we also need to make sure that when we're doing that, we don't act like we're talking down to them. It's a normal conversation. We're explaining what we're doing to help them out and those kinds of things. When we are working with students, especially those students who need extra help, we need to make sure that we keep our composure as we're talking with them. Sometimes it gets real frustrating. And unfortunately, some folks are still in the mindset, well, if I teach it, then they've learned it. Well, no, not necessarily. And so working with them in terms of, how do I explain this a different way and do it without talking down to them and those kinds of things. The next thing on the slide talks about these in terms of acting like a professional. That's one of the things that is sometimes very difficult, because there are people out there, as we've all run into, who would love to push our buttons, to make us upset just so that they can get their way. Quite honestly, they're bullies. And we need to make sure that as we're dealing professionally with folks, that we don't allow them to bully us into doing something inappropriate. If somebody says something and you allow yourself to get angry about it and you get into a confrontation, they have won that particular situation because they have controlled you. That's the same with students. If you allow a student to do something or to say something and they get to see you get angry or mad or upset, then they have won. And the reality is, we can't let them win on those kinds of things. We need to stay calm. We need to work through the situation. We need to explain what's going on. But getting angry does not work. Hardly any of us listen to somebody who's yelling and screaming at us. We just don't. That's human nature. And so the idea of being able to keep control, even though we're boiling on the inside, but not letting it show on the outside when we're working through those kinds of situations. One of the other pieces there is that if you see something that's not going right in your school, and you go to your administrator or somebody else or somebody that's leading it and say, I don't like how this is going, then please be sure and have a solution. As an administrator, when I had somebody come in and complain about one of my decisions, I didn't get mad at them. I just asked them, so what are your suggestions on how to make it better? And if they didn't have any suggestions, I would simply say, okay, well, when you come up with a solution, we'll talk about this some more. Until then, I have some things to do. So it's didn't have to get upset with them. They're welcome to come back in. But if you're going to be complaining about something, then please make sure that you do have, as a professional, that you do have some solutions. Okay, Jake, let's go to the
Yeah,
next slide.
I think,
Dr.
Mike,
Jake.
if I could add on to acting like a professional, what I always tell my teachers is that people are watching them all the time. It's not just when they're on campus, it's when they're off campus, when they're on social media. Teachers are held to a higher standard, and rightfully so. I mean, they're the builders of a country, of a community. And so I always say, teachers, you're in a fishbowl. Just be very careful with what you're doing and what you're saying, because people will latch onto that. They expect more from you, and as administrators, we expect more from our teachers too. Students will watch what teachers are doing in the classroom, in the cafeteria, on the basketball court, and so let's make sure that when we act like a professional, it's something that will elevate our students and our community and our parents.
Well, and another piece that goes right along with this is that if you make a mistake, and you will, we all do, own it and then move forward. Don't dwell on it. Don't get upset about it. You're going to make mistakes. I can't even begin to enumerate all the mistakes that I've made professionally over the years. But the key is to own it and then move forward. And too often we want to become defensive, and then we want to double down and nope, this is the right thing. And when it's really not, and we know it, but we want to save face. The best way to save face is to say, you know what? That was a mistake. How can we move? How can we correct it and then move on?
I like that, Mike. I think that really shocks kids when we have to be human and say, hey, I made a mistake. I apologize for this. The other comment I wanted to say is about thoughts too, because thoughts become our actions. And we want to stay positive among our peers, among our students. And when you have a positive attitude, and Mike, you exemplify this completely. Anytime anyone talks to you, they just feel happy, they feel motivated, they feel encouraged. Dr. Ray is like that too. That's why people get drawn to people like you too, because you have good thoughts that come out as your actions. And I think that is so powerful as educators, that we need to make sure that our thoughts are positive, encouraging. We do get frustrated sometimes. And the best advice that I heard about that when we're frustrated is find humor. Find humor in what's going on. Kids make mistakes. They say funny things, and we need to find humor in what we're doing.
And I quite honestly, and some people will disagree with me on this, but I poke fun at myself a fair amount. One of my favorite things, and it kind of goes along with today with me not showing my picture, is I have a face for radio, and it works. You know, that kind of people say, okay, you know, he understands that he does have some foibles and those kinds of things, and willing to work through those. So let's move to that next slide.
Okay.
That really is it's not only the teaching cycle, but it's also the administrative cycle. It's the life cycle in terms of our actions. And that is, first of all, you need to prepare. You need to prepare well. You need to make sure that you've taken the classes that you need, that you've learned the techniques to teach, whether it's regular ed kids or kids that have special needs, that you've gained the knowledge that you need. And you may have to do that by going and watching other people. You may have to swallow your pride and say, I don't know how to do that. Where can I learn that? And oftentimes you can learn those things from your peers. They become some of the best teachers for you, because you can go and watch them in practice. One of the things that I did as an administrator is I would go in and substitute in a teacher's class so that they could go watch another teacher to see how they're doing things and how they're doing them well, whether it's transitions or whether it's presentations on using technology, or if it's answering questions from students, whatever it is, being able to go watch those. And oftentimes, again, teachers right in the building are great examples of that. So we have to make sure that we prepare ourselves well. and that as teachers, we prepare our lesson plans well so that we know what we're doing. As administrators, preparing what we're going to do when we go into watch it, observe in a classroom, preparing ourselves with having the meetings that we need to have and knowing ahead of time what we want to do and where we're going to be. So then that brings around down to act. You know, for teachers, you're going to carry out your lesson plan. As administrators, you're going to go do the observation, or you're going to work with a committee, whatever it is. But you're going to go through that action. You're going to take that action, and you're going to do it professionally. And if you've got students with special needs, you're going to kind of focus on making sure that you've met those needs as you go through the process, and having notes in your lesson plans about what you're looking for, and what you want to do with them and for them is especially beneficial. And let me say right now, and you'll hear more later, that the things that we do to meet the needs of our special needs kids are probably really good things to do for all of our students. I had a teacher one time that I suggested that she use the closed method for giving notes for special needs students. And closed method is where you have the note written out, but you have there's a couple of words that are missing. So as the student looks at the notes that are on the board or the overhead or whatever it is that you're using, tell how old I am with overhead, what they have to do is just fill in those blanks. So that helps them connect what they're seeing with what they're writing, which helps them connect with the learning. Well, this teacher told me, well, that's not fair. And I says, well, if you think it's fair, give it to everybody. And she kind of thought for a second, and I said, it's good practice for everybody. And that's what she started doing, because that's the way she felt that then it would be fair. And that's fine. But oftentimes what we do to help meet these special needs really is good for all teachers and for all students. So that brings up the area that oftentimes we forget. And it's actually, in my mind, it's the most important thing that we do, whether it's as an administrator, as a teacher, in life. And that is that you reflect on your act. I can't tell you how many times that I have gone to a teacher's classroom, watched them, and things didn't go real well. And the teacher just said, you know, I guess that didn't work. You know, oh, well, that's the way it goes. They weren't doing any reflection at all. So the idea, the first thing you ask is, did I get the results that I wanted? And administrators, when you're sitting down with a teacher after you've done an observation, this is a great question to ask. Did you get the results that you wanted or that you expected? And if not, why not? What happened? You know, what needs to change? Is it my preparation didn't go well enough? Did it, was there some external factors that went on that I didn't have any control over? Maybe there was a fire alarm in the middle of your lesson that you taught, or a big windstorm came up and was causing problems in the building. There's all kinds of things that you don't have any control over that can cause problems with your lesson. And then when you figure out what needs to change, then who is it that can help me? Is it somebody in the building? Is it something that I need to go learn? And being willing to be honest with yourself about what you need to do and what you need to change. And then finding out, how can they help me? Do I need to take a class from them? Do I need to do some more reading? In fact, one of the areas that would benefit all of us greatly, and I learned this, reinforced this with Dr. Lisa, as she gave a presentation in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago about the brain and how the brain works and how it memorizes and how it retains things, all of those kinds of things. You know, if we haven't done some research on that, then our teaching techniques and methodologies may not be quite as good as they could be. And then figuring out, what are my next steps? What do I need to do now? Writing, for example, when you're reflecting, writing down notes about what you want to do differently in that lesson the next time you teach it. There's a quote that's equally attributed to Albert Einstein and to Henry Ford, and I can having studied both of those, I think I could hear both of them saying it. It says, if you keep doing the same things, you will end up getting the same results. So if you keep doing things not very well, you're going to continue to not getting very good results. But let's take a look at the flip side. Did I get the results I wanted? And if so, what did I do to get those results? Was it the way that I presented it? Was the information that I had for background material that I gave to them? Was it the assignment? What really made this lesson go well? Or what really made this observation go well? Same thing, administrators asking the teachers about those kinds of things. What can I now? Always looking at how to improve. What could I do to improve the results? Because it can always get better. Is it maybe looking up some things on the internet? What are my next steps? How do I get better? And again, looking at, are there others around that can help me out? The monthly workshops that we do during the school year oftentimes provide information and ideas that can help all of us become better teachers, better administrators. I love going to the workshops, attending the workshops, because I learn so much when I am working with those kinds of things. So the reflection part is something that we often leave out because we don't want to admit to ourselves that we're not the absolute best that we could be. And the reality is we're never the absolute best that we could be. We can always improve in all of these areas.
And Dr. Mike, with the reflection part, I always think of it as being like sports. After a football game, soccer game, basketball game, the coach gets together with the players and they watch how they did, and they evaluate it, and they reflect on how they can improve. And I think it's hard, don't you think, to find time as teachers and educators to reflect? I know for myself, I had a 20-minute drive home, and that was the time that I would sit and think about what happened as an administrator or when I was a teacher, and reflect and make plans for how to improve. Or right after the lesson was over, during passing time, I had 5 minutes where I could write down and say, this lesson didn't go so well. I need to change this, or I need to change this for next time. And it made an impact even the following year when I did that same lesson, or whenever I taught that lesson. And I think reflection, like you said, is the most powerful tool that we have as educators. And I often say, I've worked with teachers that were 20-year veteran teachers teaching their first year 20 times in a row.
Right.
And it's because they didn't reflect. And if we reflect, when you get to be that 20th year veteran teacher, you're going to have so much experience behind that because you've used that reflection to improve. Just like you can see with excellent athletes, they reflect and they improve, and they move level by level up.
So to show you how old I am, when I first became an administrator, what I used to have teachers do is to record themselves on cassette tapes, record their lesson, and have them listen to it in their car, because almost all the cars in those days had cassette tape players in them. And so I'd tell them, on your way home, throw the tape in and listen to it.
Yeah.
And listen to what you say, and listen to what you're doing, and those kinds of things. And now it's even easier. You just turn your phone on record. It can record what you're doing, or your computer, and be able then to play that back as you're going home, or as you're sitting, like you said, in a preparation period, if you've got one. And then those kinds of things, because now it's not being played for anybody else. It's me being forced to listen to what I'm really saying, because we often don't really think about it or remember what we're actually saying and doing. We know what we think we did and what we wanted to do, but that oftentimes is different than what we actually did.
And Dr. Mike, do you think we have to be careful with reflection to where we don't beat ourselves up? There's a question in the comments by Ferris. It's a good question. Can it be harmful? Can it be damaging? And I think we have to be careful on the type of reflection that we do.
Yes. And it is, because the thing to reflect on is not only what didn't go well, but what did go well, and things that you don't want to change. Yeah, this worked great. I need to make sure I remember this the next time I teach this lesson. So, and the other piece is to understand that everybody has some areas to improve in, but it's not, you don't get down on yourself. It's, you know what? I am going to improve. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try something a little bit out of the ordinary for me. I'm going to step out of my little confinement that I put myself in. But yeah, you have to make sure that you're not just getting down, just going, oh, this was terrible, this was horrible, this was terrible, this was horrible. No, it probably wasn't. We're our worst critics. We truly are. And so we have to make sure that we are focusing also on the positive things that happened and move forward with those as well.
I like it. Yeah, it's really good.
And so in terms of kind of finishing this piece up, as a professional, like, always do your best, even if you don't get the recognition you think you deserve. And this is a big key. I'm one of those people that I truly don't need to have somebody patting me on the back all the time. It's fine. It's like the announcing that I do for track meets. I never announce my name. I just don't do it because who I am doesn't make any difference. What's the important thing is that the information is getting out during the track meet. And there's lots of times that you're going to do a great job and the administrator didn't come in, so they didn't get to see it. That's okay. You still did a great job. And if you got to have pats on the back all the time, that could be a problem. Do things because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes that's tough. Well, if I do that, my other teachers are going to be mad at me because, so what? You do what's best for kids because it's what's the right thing to do. And then always making sure that you're always trying to improve your craft. You're always trying to improve on how you're teaching, learning new ideas. Believe me, the technology, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but technology has truly changed how I teach. Now, some things it hasn't. Like today, I have a lesson plan for this presentation that I've been doing. I've got it written out. I know what I'm doing, about what time it is. By the way, I figured out how to look at my presentation without having to see the video,
Nice.
the slides. But the idea is that we're always trying to improve what we're doing. We're trying to figure out where we're going. And I don't teach the same now as I did when I was using overheads. The technology has changed it. And in many ways, the technology has made it significantly easier. Now, does it take a little more time up front sometimes before the lesson to get things ready with technology? Yes, but I still have improved. I'm a way better overall teacher now than I was 45 years ago when I started out. And the other thing is working with other staff members. You have an amazing wealth of experience and expertise in those people who are teaching around you. Be willing to utilize it and be willing to say to them, you know, I'm not as good at this particular area as you are. I want to learn from you. Because then you're going to have an area that you're the expert in, and they're going to want to learn from you. So I think I'll close that off at that. And thank you very much for being with us. I will be honest, folks, I am not going to finish out the entire workshop because I do need to get back to doing some announcing here very shortly and getting ready for that. But I hope you have a great day. Hope you have a wonderful summer, or whatever season it is for you that we're coming up in, but some time off from school. And please take some time for yourself and for your family, because those are so important as we're moving on, and it'll help us be better professionals when we do that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Mike. And actually, you've made my job a little easier because you've covered many of the points I was going to cover on improving teaching. So let me just add a few things and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Jake. One of the things that comes to my mind when people are saying, how can I be a better teacher, or how can I inspire my students, so forth. One of the first things that comes to my mind has nothing to do with the lesson that you're trying to teach, and it's called behavior management. And I think I've shared this before with a workshop, but it's really an important lesson. When I was finishing my doctoral program, in a course in psychology. At that time, we had to be aware of all of the IQ tests, intelligent quotient test, where you could figure out, well, no, Albert Einstein has a very high IQ, and students with a very low IQ are not able to understand as much. But anyway, one of the things we had to do was study the Wechsler Intelligence Test, IQ. And one of the questions on the test towards the end was this question: in what way are praise and punishment alike? Well, the average thinker thinks, they're different, they're not the same. But the real truth is they are the same because they're both forms of discipline. Think about that. Discipline doesn't have to be a negative things. When Dr. Jake said that Dr. Mike and me are very kind to people and forth, that's discipline. He's saying something positive, and it makes us want to do something. And so many times we fail to realize that good statements to students, that is a form of discipline. But the other part of that is when we really do that, we have a connection with students. I would challenge you, if you want to be a better teacher, find some reason to connect to every student in your class at some time. Maybe not all on the same day, maybe not all in the same week, but you will be surprised, even that student who seems to be reluctant, who doesn't seem to be paying attention, who doesn't seem to really do his or her assignments well. Learning to connect with that students and reflect back to the story that we've read many times about Mrs. Thompson and Teddy Stoddard. One teacher, because she paid attention to this student. So I challenge you, if you want to be a better teacher, connect to your students. I think another thing I would suggest to you is you need to personalize learning. If you can personalize learning, one size does not fit all for everybody in your classroom, but find ways to personalize that. If the student is interested in Legos, allow that student to demonstrate learning with Legos. There's tremendous ability in knowing how to put Lego things together, and that's use of the hands and so forth. I think another thing that I would suggest, and Dr. Mike talked about this, but it's really important, communicate with your coworkers. You're not in this alone. One of the reasons we like to do these workshops on a monthly basis is to see that there is a group of teachers who we all want to learn. And Dr. Mike said it, and I echo it. I'm still learning every day. Every time I go into a school, I learn something new. And that's really important. Don't be afraid to go to your coworkers, and maybe even have one of your coworkers, if time permits, come into your classroom and observe you and give you honest feedback about what he or she saw. That's another way to communicate with coworkers. And the final thing I'll add, and then I will turn it over to Dr. Jake, is learn how to connect with your learners. You need to know where that learner is as a person, because as we've said before, the most important thing you have to do might not have anything to do with today's lesson. So learn to connect with your learners. If you can do that, you will encourage them to accept what you have. We showed the video of the lady on the TED Talk, and she says, students don't really learn well from teachers they don't like. Think about that. So make yourself, and I don't mean by that, as Dr. Mike said, I don't mean that you give in to every whim and every desire, but make sure that you spend your time showing your students that you know who they are as people. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Jake, and I know that
you have a couple questions, Dr. Ray, in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'd be good for talk a little bit about how discipline can be positive.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think one of the things in discipline, we love to put the rules up. Don't do this. I think I told you the example once. I was on a school playground. It was here in the United States, and they had the 10 rules for the playground. Rule number 1 was don't. Rule number 2 was don't. Number 3 was don't. And rule number 9 was, or rule number 10, excuse me, was have a good time. Wait a minute. How can you have a good time? Everything's don't. So I think we need to speak positively about what we expect of students, and they will learn, even seniors in high school who are about ready to go out into this big wide world, even seniors in high school will really respond well to positive expectations. So concentrate on what you expect rather than saying, do not throw your pencil on the floor. Why don't you go to them and say, hey, next time when you through with your principal, why don't you raise your hand and we'll have you come and sharpen it, or something like that, something positive to help the student. So I think that's really, rather than, and face it, we've all been in the classroom many, many years. There are going to be students who are going to try your patience, find out what it is that makes them tick, and find out what it is that's positive.
There's another good question, Dr. Ray, from Zahra. It says, it's a brand new teacher, wants some advice about how to attract students to get more excited about a subject area that's difficult that they teach.
Well, let me go back to what I just said. First of all, get to know the student. And for instance, I don't know, Zachary, what you teach. I'm looking at your message here.
It doesn't say specifically.
Doesn't say, but
No.
let's say, see, Dr. Jake is a scientist, I'm the linguist, and so we support each other, because if there's science questions, but let's pretend that a student doesn't understand any of the concepts of mathematics and just throws his hand up and says, I don't understand. So try to find some avenue for you to communicate with that student about mathematics. Tell me, do you play computer games at home? How do you keep score? How do you think they keep score? Find something of their interest, and then you can move on to something a little more deep, a little more meaningful, because it's more to do with mathematics. And so I say, find out what it is that makes that student tick. By tick, maybe that's an American phrase, but find out what it is that makes that student really think and zone in on that. If your student does well on the computer, help the student understand how computer learning or computer assisted learning can help that student. So I say, if you're a new teacher and you're having a student who's having difficulties with a student, talk with a student and say, tell me where your problems are with this. Tell me what math issue that you have, so that I can help you understand maybe a better way to look at this. So it's an individual situation, and that's our job as teachers. We have to understand, and if you have a classroom of 30 people, you've got 30 different ways of learning in there. So find out what it is. I don't know if that helps, Zachary, but
I think it does. I think that there's quite a few other questions. I think we can come back to some of those questions as we get to the end and we have some open question time, if that's okay, Dr. Ray.
Yeah, that's good. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, Zachary wrote back and she wrote the word maths.
Yeah.
M-A-T-H-S. One of the things that we always talk about, math is both a singular and a plural subject. That's the linguist in me. So we use the word math or mathematics, because mathematics is the whole subject, but math is the singular, M-A-T-H. And I know that in other languages, they use the word maths. There's other things that we talk about.
Yeah, and math can be a challenge to teach and get kids excited about it. I think Allah says maybe chemistry too, that she teaches chemistry. Kids hate chemistry. I don't know, Allah. I'm a chemistry teacher. I love it. And I like Dr. Drew's comment of, for AP chemistry, make root beer. There's so many components of chemistry when you're making root beer. Yeah, exciting. Good examples. I also want to now start about technology, because this is a topic that is coming up very, I think, regularly in education, and the scare of technology. And I think we've probably seen this in schools over the past several decades. Dr. Ray, I'm not trying to say that you're old, but you probably saw it when TVs were coming out and radios. I mean, that people were getting more nervous. I know when the phone came out, people were nervous about that. And then when the internet came out, schools started to get nervous about that. And now we have artificial intelligence, and they're saying that artificial intelligence is going to make the internet look like, that was just a bleep in our history books, that it's going to really revolutionize about what's going on. And I know in schools right now, we see artificial intelligence being utilized to personalize learning experiences, to evaluate students' progress, and to really help and organize administrative procedures. Students are using it. We know that the big worries that we have in schools are students using it to cheat, to have AI writing their essays, but also what we do know is that artificial intelligence is here, and we need to start utilizing it ourselves and having our students utilize it so they can use it as a tool to improve student learning, that they can access information, that it can help improve the tasks that we have at hand. And we do have an expert with us. Dr. Drew is with us, and he's been a technology expert for years. Dr. Drew, do you want to weigh in on artificial intelligence?
Sure. AI, deep learning and large language models have been around for maybe 15 years, and they've just recently really taken on a front interface where it's free or low cost to use. And so there's still cost, by the way. They're called tokens. And on the backside of Copilot and Microsoft, or with Gemini on the Google side, there's still tokens being spent. But those backside costs are being covered by front side interests. I'll just put it that way. So, I think we need to think about our pedagogy a little bit differently. We can't just ask, for example, describe 5 pronouns. You need to use a pronoun in a sentence about your family. You need to personalize. Hyper personalization is the answer to engagement in an AI world. Now, I skipped over a whole bunch of conversations there, but I hope to maybe join you again this year some point and talk a little bit more in depth.
Great. Well, thanks, Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew's been on many visits with us, and I'm sure some of you have seen him, and we are going to welcome him to come and do some presentations with us later on. I want to comment on Fedis. He says ChatGPT, in the comments, says, is like having a 24/7 native English speaker by your side. Isn't that true? If I get a message or an email and I don't speak that language, you can put it into ChatGPT, into artificial intelligence, and it'll translate it like that. Or if you need something quickly written, we're using it constantly, and I think it's a good tool, but it's something that we do have to be careful of. And I like Dr. Drew's thoughts about making learning personal, personalize the learning. Dr. Ray talked about it too, and I think that's very, very important. I think some other trends that we're going to see, not only with artificial intelligence, but more technology-based, is more blended learning. We're going to still see classes and learning that go on online, and then classes that go on face-to-face. We're going to see both of those models still combined and provide the flexibility to parents and to students. And we accredit a lot of online schools that not only try to do 100% online, but they also try to do some face-to-face interactions. So the blended learning model is something that you're going to see, where there's going to be the teach and the reteach model, where students will be able to watch the lessons at home or in class, and then have some time with the teacher to go over specific concepts and really dive into additional learning. Some other things that I find it fascinating is virtual and augmented reality. Those are some great ways to take students on field trips. I've used virtual reality to take students on field trips to the pyramids, because you can't take your entire student body to Egypt. And they can put on simple goggles, and you can take them, and they can see those different areas and get a lot more understanding when they can see it in that 3D model. Very, very exciting. It's something that's been around for a long time. 3D movies have been around for a long time, and it's something that we're gonna still see more integration into schools. A big push right now is STEM and STEAM education, focusing on science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We accredit several programs that do STEM and STEAM education. So they're focusing a lot on robotics, coding, maker spaces, any of that type of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, that really hands-on, those really hands-on learning opportunities that schools provide. And so I would encourage you to look and see, if you're a science teacher, how you can integrate more of those activities, because there's a ton. Type it into ChatGPT. What are some ways that I can get my chemistry students or my math students interested in this type of subject area? And it will give you several different ideas. There's some other things that we need to be careful of and that we're aware is we need to make sure that students have specific digital citizenship education, because they're inundated with so much information on social media and on internet that we need to make sure that they know how to best use that as a tool, and that they don't get sucked in and that they get distracted. The average person is in front of a screen 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day is a tremendous amount, and that's just the average. I'll bet you there's students that are checking their cell phones on a non-school day hundreds of times and scrolling through endless reels on Facebook or going through YouTube. And we need to really focus in. This may be some of the most important things that we can do, is helping students learn how to navigate on social media and the internet and use it as a tool. We also need to talk to them about cyberbullying, about privacy, and how to appropriately use information that they come across, especially when they're writing a paper. Sure, they can get some ideas from ChatGPT and other AI programs, but they shouldn't be using it as copy and paste. We still need to create good learners, students that can really perform well on their own and communicate effectively. We're still seeing a lot of schools moving towards a one-to-one device program where every single student has a tablet, a Chromebook, or a laptop. And these programs can be very, very effective. But again, we have to use them effectively. We have to use them wisely. We have to use it to make sure that it is producing student outcomes and student learning, and that each student is meeting their potential. That's our goal at Array Global, is to help every student reach their potential through school improvement. And if we come into a school and we see something that is not improving student performance, it's something that schools don't need to be utilizing. You can have a one-to-one device program, and we've seen it many times where schools are using that as a babysitting program, where the teacher finishes the lesson and then says, get out your Chromebooks and open up this game or this program. And it's more of a babysitting, tool, that instead of actually reinforcing what was taught. So I think we need to be very, very careful with that. It's also kind of neat to walk into schools and see a lot more smart classroom technologies, where we have interactive whiteboards, smart projectors, classroom management software, and gaming software to help students focus and behave well. And those things are great. But again, I think we have to, like any tool, we have to make sure that that tool is making us more productive and engaging the students and helping us to create better student outcomes. So I think there's a lot of different things, especially with technology going on right now. And I think going back to 50, 60 years ago, when new things were coming out, everyone was just saying we need to be cautious with it. We need to be careful with it. And we need to make sure that it is supporting student learning and not distracting student learning. Dr. Ray, those are all the comments I had about technology. I haven't been watching the chat because I've been talking and looking at my notes. Anything that you see in the chat that we need to go over specific to technology?
Yes. Well, not specific to technology, Dr. Jake. I'll let you handle that one. But there have been 2 or 3 comments, questions that I want to respond to, back to teaching techniques and how to make students. From Aisha, one, Angelina, and Mahmoud. Those all are kind of around this area of how can I make this interesting to students? Or what do I think Aisha's question was really more specific to a student who seems bored no matter what you do. And I say, put the lesson aside for now. Get to know that student. Find time to talk with that student. Find out what his or her interests are. If the student says, well, hey, I like to play soccer or football, say, hey, great, I'm going to watch the soccer match this Saturday, whatever. Would you help me understand what this is? Find something that you can identify with that student. It might not have anything to do with chemistry or math or English or social studies, but find that first and establish that relationship with that student. I promise you, if you can do that, you will find that that student will somehow become more interested in your classroom because you know that person as an individual. I think the other part of the question that was one from one of these three was with a student with a low activity or low IQ. How do you deal with a student with low IQ? We have to understand that there are certain levels. One of the reasons why we are so important in our accreditation process with the curriculum idea of scope and sequence. Scope is what you expect students to know, be, show, do at the end of 12th grade when they're leaving you. But if we know that is the eventual goal, then we have to backtrack and say, okay, by the end of grade 11, what do they need to know to get ready for grade 12? Grade 10 for grade 11. And sometimes you're going to have to backtrack, because not everybody's going to be where you are or where the rest of the class are. Let's find out where that student's level of interest is and reward that student at that level before you can expect him. And remember too, from the video that we saw a couple of times ago with a student who had a quiz of 20 questions and got 18 wrong and two right. And the teacher said, congratulations, you got 2 right. And the student said, well, is that an F? And he said, well, yes, but you got 2 right. You're not, you're on your way. And so sometimes we have to take that student with low IQ and understand he or she is at a totally different level than you would expect. So find out where that sequence is. If the student has some skills that is in the 6th grade and you find out that that student has skills at 2nd grade, start working on 2nd grade skills with that student. So anyway, I wanted to respond to those 3 areas. There might be others, but I wanted to respond to those because I think they're kind of indicative of what other people are thinking and asking.
Another question, Dr. Ray, was suggestions on ways that we can personalize teaching. And before you answer, let me answer, because as a science teacher, going back to some of the comments, it is hard sometimes to get students excited about science. And I remember teaching Newton's 3 laws of motion, and I gave students options. They could make a video of Newton's 3 laws of motion. They could write an essay of it, or they could draw something. And so each one of the students had their different strengths, and we all sat down and watched some of the videos that came out, and some of them were absolutely hilarious. They were amazing, but the intent was for them to learn and understand what Newton's 3 laws of motion was. And so we had students out on their motorcycles, on their bikes, and explaining the Newton's 3 laws of motion. And then we had others that preferred to write, and they'd write it out and explain it and give examples. And then we had some that would draw it and draw arrows about the different laws of nature that are affecting their picture. I mean, it was a great way to really capitalize on the students' interests. But Dr. Ray, if you have any other ideas of how we could really focus on students' interests and different subject areas.
Yeah, and I just, the general comment I make is get to know the student.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get to know your students. You cannot, if you've got a student who is reluctant or bored or whatever, you need to get to know that student. Emphasize that. If you need to ask the student to come to see you after school and say, hey, can we have a talk after, do something to get to know that student.
I like it. Yeah. Devotha has a comment, a question. Which methods can I use to let learners with varying understanding level in the class understand my lesson within the time allocated without using remediation?
Let me just jump in. I don't know what you were going to say.
No, I wanted you to jump in.
One of the ways we do that is cooperative learning. We put students in groups and we help them help each other. And don't designate, well, this is the bright student, so I'm going to put him in this group, and this is the slow student, so I'll put him. Just put students in groups. You will be surprised how much they can help each other in their learning if you just let students talk with each other and guide their conversation. For instance, you mentioned Newton's laws. Anyway, just take one of them and put them in groups and say, let's all talk about law number one, whatever you call it, Jake, I'm not sure. But let's talk about law number one. Stop at that. Don't think they have to do the whole picture right now. Let's start with something.
Yeah, and Dr. Drew makes a good comment too. Differentiate for different groups of students. An example is level techs. Yeah, great example that we can utilize. Because we do, like Devotha says, we do have a limited allocated time, and we need to make sure that we're maximizing that. And sometimes, like Dr. Ray said, we need to pull those students in later on and work with those students individually to get them really up to their level.
You know, our hour is almost up, and I'm guessing, and we have tried to just respond to the questions we received, but do any of you have any last minute questions or comments you would like to make before we close this off today? We're trying to be respectful of your time. We know with Farouz Ferris, it's the middle of the night for him, and so we're trying to respect.
We missed him too for a couple months, really. So it's great to have him back. Welcome,
Ferris, good to see you. Did you have a question or a comment?
Okay, thank you very much for the session. I'm feeling still a bit sleepy, but I'm sober enough to ask a question. So my question is kind of futuristic and closely resonates with your topic, educational trends. So I've got a question to ask the entire panel. You know, Dr. Jake just walked us through the technological advancements from different time periods. So I'm just curious, what's on the horizon? What's next? What's next after AI? Is there any impression of the slightest impression of what's about to come? And how should we get prepared for that?
Well, I just saw Dr. Drew unmute himself, so he's gonna be the one.
I'm
that
so all over this one. Yeah, go back and watch
people are still coming to grips with the integration of AI, and I'm just curious what comes after AI and how long is it gonna take them to really compromise with that novelty and breakthrough. Thank you.
Yeah, check out Learn LM by Google. There was a 2-hour Google I/O summit this last week, and there's a summary of the 15 tools that Google's putting out: Image XR, Music XR, and then Learn LM are the 3 big ones. Check those out, and then make sure you chime into our next webinar with Jake. And I can't wait to share some stuff with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you watch a summary of that, I watched a short clip. They said AI like 300 times. Every single presenter was talking about AI. And so AI is we're just starting to get into it, and it's going to keep developing and growing. I think that's probably what's the biggest thing on the horizon, is just ramped up artificial intelligence.
Drew, there's a question. Is that learn.lm?
It's Learn LM, and it essentially just takes a topic and breaks
just
it.
one word, Learn LM.
Yeah,
okay.
It's Learn L as in lollipop, M as in mother. And the tool just essentially breaks down learning pieces. There's a really interesting, well, Khan Academy is doing this with math with Khanmigo, and Learn LM allows us to do it with other subjects. That's the short way to say it.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, Dr. Ray, we can actually start off, we could end with our words of wisdom, and then while people are filling out the survey, we can answer some more questions at that point if you want.
Sure, let's do that. Let me challenge you with something that I recently read, and we have access to a lot of these things now through all of the online resources we have. But I wanted to leave this with all of you as you leave school the end of this year, and as you have a rest during the summer, and as you prepare yourselves for another school year. And I challenge you all with this statement. You never really know the true impact you have on those around you. You never know how much someone needed that smile you gave them. You never know how much your kindness turns someone's entire life around. You never know how much someone needed that long hug or deep talk. So don't wait to be kind. Don't wait for someone else to be kind first. Don't wait for better circumstances or for someone to change. Just be kind, because you never know how much someone needs it.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ray. I don't have anything to add after that. Those are some great words of wisdom. I did post in the chat the workshop survey that needs to be completed. And while people are filling that out, we will stay on and answer any questions that we have. We'll start off with Aisha's question in the chat. It's for you, Dr. Ray. She wants it. She says, Dr. Ray, so you're the man of the hour for this one. What do you do with students who are distracted and come to school for fun merely and don't participate in class, but get great scores in exams? How do we deal with those students?
Well, it's the opposite end of what we were talking about earlier, with students who don't have the skills to be up to the level where they ought to be. I think that we need to find challenging things for them. We have to find some things for that student who seems to be bored, does well on tests. Give some other assignments for that student. Tell that, have a conversation with that student. Say, obviously, you get it. You're there. And here's what I'm going to suggest you do for the next step. Find out what it is that will challenge that student beyond what the lesson is or beyond what you think students are capable of doing. And I promise you, if you will help get that student motivated in another area or beyond what you're teaching or the lesson, that you will find, if you keep this up with these students, if you keep these up from these students, you will find, not everybody's perfect. Not everybody will respond, but I think you do your best just with a low-level student, helping bring them up to where their level is, and with a higher-level student, help them understand there's something beyond. Oh, you already have this, so let me give you an assignment or have you do something that the other students haven't been asked to do, because I think you will be able to do this. It's a matter of motivation.
Yeah, I like that. And that can be hard with students that can be bored, but giving them different activities that really challenge them. When we talk about differentiation, often when we talk about differentiation, we feel like we're talking about the students who are struggling the most. But differentiation is for all students that struggle and students that excel. And when we differentiate different classes, different lessons, we need to make sure that we're challenging the upper students too, especially them, because like you said, in here, students who aren't challenged, they start to act out, they start to be problems, and they're sometimes really smart, and they will cause more problems than you know what to do with. And they're usually the ringleaders in the classroom too, because they're smart and kids like them. So we have to be very careful and just make sure you have plans and activities for them. And I think another way is building those relationships and giving them trust, making them part of the class, giving them some leadership responsibilities can be very motivational.
And I think I've told you before, I have a son who was at that level where he was bored with everything, and teachers didn't know how to motivate him. Well, guess what? What goes around comes around. He has a son who's just like him. He gets bored with school. And I think, you deserve this. You deserve this. And yet what we did is we found ways to get him interested in something. Might not have anything to do with the lesson or the topic, but get him interested in something.
Is that how you were, Dr. Ray, when you were in school?
Oh, no, I was such a no. I probably was. Come on, give me a break here. I don't want to know this stuff.
Yeah, right. No, I get it. So yeah, make sure everyone, there's a question in there, Devotha, make sure you fill out the survey. That's the only way that we know that you attended in order to get a certificate. And if you have any questions, Dr. Ray and I and Dr. Drew and Mr. Tony's here. We have a lot of people who'd love to answer any questions you have. When are we coming to China? Dr. Ray, I'll let you answer that one. That's a good one. You've been there
Oh.
several times.
Yeah, I have, not several, once.
Oh, just
And
once? Oh.
Just once, and it was very, very enlightening.
Well, we are
Ferris-
actively
Ferris,
looking
if-
for schools. in-
Ferris, if you get some schools for us in China, we'll be there. Okay,
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great summer.
can I just say one thing? Hope it's the last thing you hear. Don't wait for better circumstances or for someone to change. Just be kind. That's it.
Thank you all.